Everybody ready? 6 o'clock, I'll call the April 14th, 2020 meeting of the West County Board of Supervisors to order. We'll stand for the invocation and remain standing for the pledge of allegiance.
Our Father in heaven, we thank Thee for this lovely day today, for the opportunity we have to meet and to discuss the issues concerning Wythe County. We are grateful for the blessings upon our community. We ask Thee to bless these leaders tonight, that they will have wisdom and they will have wisdom with them as they make their decisions concerning the citizens of Wythe County. We ask that Thou would bless the healthcare providers and the first responders to be safe from this virus going around, and their families as they treat the sick will also be safe. Bless our community and bless the people that are sick, that they will be healed. We ask for Thy Spirit to be with us this evening, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the
flag
of
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda, citizens' time. Do we have any correspondence we entered? That being said, I'll close citizens' time. Moving on, payment of invoices.
Make a motion, we pay the bills.
Have a motion to approve the invoices. Have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions, discussion, or any invoice that any member wants to pull? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 Approved. 5, 4, 1 absent.
About 6,
I mean,
4. Can't you count?
I didn't get my paper copy of my agenda. I was trying to go back and forth. Sorry. Maybe have one little thing to throw y'all. Oh, it's all right. I didn't notice it till moving on. Minutes of the previous meeting from March 24th, 2020.
I make a motion we approve.
Have a motion to approve. Have a second.
Second.
Have a motion to second. Any corrections or additions? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
So approved. 6, 1 absent. Moving on to old business. Mr. Baird, do we have anything under old business?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have any items tonight under old business.
Any board member have anything under old business discussed? Okay, moving on, new business, COVID-19.
Mr. Chairman, a couple things. I've got a few things on the agenda. Mr. Crawford is here with us. You have a handout in front of you, and if you don't mind, before we get into these agenda items, if you don't mind, just let Mr. Crawford speak, and then also if you all have any questions that you all would like to ask or anything from citizens before we move into that, I would request that time now.
Mr. Crawford?
Thank you very much. So in front of you, you have the information, starting out with a milestone of all the events that have happened pertaining to the county, starting from the March 12th declaration from the state of Virginia, going to today, where we put out a press release this evening. Also in this packet, you have the 2 executive orders from the state, or I'm sorry, 3, being the declaration number 53 and number 55, our declaration of a state of emergency, and all the releases that we have put out as the county are in this packet. As of today, we're still at 7. 7 is the number that we've been at for a week now. with that number and with the state recording system, that number will stay at 7. It will not decrease. We have 2 cases, our early cases that possibly are resolved at this time, but they will not reflect in these numbers. So our number could be less than 7, but our state statistic is not going to reflect that at this time, or in any time during the data. They are not going to put the resolved in the counties. I have been talking with Stephen. We are going to look at some possible more testing in our area. At this time, the hospital is testing, and they're testing at both the hospital and at the urgent care on Holston Road. And you can go there, they'll have the questions that they always ask, the screener questions, and then they'll test you if you answer those questions to the affirmative. And those tests will take anywhere from 48 hours to 5 days to get back. The other place you can go to get tested are Smith County Hospital from here or New River. New River has a roaming testing facility at this time, so that's the other option that we have. PPE-wise, after tomorrow, we'll be good. We're getting a shipment in tomorrow from the state. We'll be in good supply at this point. We'll still be asking for some more as our supply will be used, but we do look like we're going to be able to supply all of our healthcare has been supplied, but our DSS, Sheriff's Office, and all other second line will be supplied after tomorrow. So with that said, I'll open up for any questions.
All those shipments of supplies, tell them just a little bit of information. I mean, some of the shipments that you've gone and picked up have been very minimal of what they've brought in.
Correct. So there are 3 different organizations that are supplying our county. If it is healthcare, like the hospital, that's the Department of Health is supplying them. If it is EMS, the Office of EMS is supplying them. And then my office is supplying our fire departments, our sheriff's offices, and our DSS and that line. We have had some supplies at my level for the people that I'm supplying, but we have not had gloves and such. We are getting those in tomorrow, like I said. But what happens is there's an equation that goes in, the number of cases that you have, the number of calls that the EMS is running during the day, and your population goes into an equation, and they decide where the scarce supplies are going to. With our numbers being low at 7 right now, there are other counties such as Washington County who has more, Montgomery County that are above us on that list of supplying. So that's why it's important that we use our supplies wisely. We're letting people know, we're changing how we're using those supplies. Also that we use the right statistics, that we're letting our first responders know when they're getting in contact with the cases we know. So we're doing everything that we can to use our supplies wisely. But again, the whole state of Virginia's got this scarcity of supplies, so we're just trying to do what's best for our providers at this time.
When did the test become available?
At the hospital?
Either there and the other area? Because I know people that's with symptoms and they told them they couldn't be tested.
So from what I understand, and I've talked to the CEO, those tests have been there. So when we first got started with COVID back in March, the testing questions were stringent. You had to be in contact with somebody, you had to show symptoms, and you had to be after the 5 days of exposure, you had to answer all those correct. At this point, those have become more lax. There are more people getting tested, but we are not anywhere near the testing capability of Northern Virginia or even a Montgomery County at this point. We're moving that way, and we're making strides, but we have the test, the hospital has the test, but we still have improvement in that area.
These individuals went to the physicians last week, and they told them that they didn't have tests, that they wouldn't be tested. The quarantine is 14 days.
So, and certain doctors do not have the test here in the county. The hospital and the urgent care does, and the health department can get you the test. But those are the only 3 that right now in the county has tests.
Thank you.
Curtis, who limits the test? Is that directly done by Richmond
I would,
as far as how many tests the area gets?
so it is a request done by the health department. They are the ones that do the requests, and then they go through the processes of saying, we have this many potential cases, this is how many tests we need, and that's how they get those provided to them.
What other doctor's office did you say had them?
It's Dr. Dove's office out at the urgent care on Holston Road.
That's what I thought.
And I played phone tag yesterday and today with the CEO at the hospital, and I'll ask those questions again to Mark. Curtis has been in touch with him, but just reiterate, do we have the number of tests that we need, and do we need to do more to be helping LifePoint in this situation? Because we do know we have a large agency of Ballad Health to our west, and we have a large agency of Korean to our east, and both of those areas are seeing more cases. And I want to make certain if there's anything we need to be doing to help in the hospital, cry wolf, that we need more testing kits or whatever in the process. Don't know if we do or not, but just offering that conversation with him.
Right. And we do, they have, after talking to the CEO, one of the positive cases did come from the hospital. The rest of the positive cases have come from other testing facilities outside, whether it be Ballad or Carilion.
Curtis, on the equipment, the PPE, and I know if you watch the news media, they're selling the horror stories, but we're not reusing that equipment.
No.
We're stocked enough that our EMS people, it's single use.
Correct. We're still in good shape especially with masks. We did have a stockpile of masks here in the county. So we were able to provide certain supplies to them so that they would not have to do that. The same with the police department and the sheriff's office and DSS. Our biggest downfall were gloves and gowns. When COVID happened, unless you were a healthcare agency giving first line care to someone, you couldn't order those supplies. Those are becoming a little bit easier to get a hold of, and that's why our supply, we're able to get those now. Yeah, we're not. I don't know of any cases where we're reusing having the PPE.
What about our nursing homes in the county?
At this time, they're still closed down. I'm not going to say I've heard that they have tested, so that's hearsay, but no cases. As soon as
closed down, you mean closed to the public?
Yeah, I'm sorry, closed to the public. And when the nursing home gets affected, the Department of Health comes in and they work with that nursing home one-on-one to make sure that the testing's done. When Washington County had their case, that's what happened. They tested, they found the cases, and they treated it as needed to. At this time, we don't know of any, at either one of our nursing homes, anything like that going on.
And I know this is probably not a question for you, but you said that, currently we've got 7 positive cases, but they don't subtract the people that recover.
Correct.
So if we have 7 positive cases and the first 2 cases have underwent treatment, self-quarantine, whatever, they're no longer contagious. That would bring us down to 5. Why don't they follow up with that? I have a hard time that the health department does not follow up with these people, because I think we're giving the public false information, and we can only give the public the information that they supply us.
Yeah.
But if you've got 7 cases and all 7 of them are treated, then the public can know. I mean, we still need social distance, I understand that, but why are they not following up with these cases? And if they are following up, then they need to release that information to the public.
Yeah.
Correct. And I can't say that they're not following up, but I can say that we asked the question to the health department 2 weeks ago, and it was told that their system would not show, they had no plans for their system to show any recovery numbers. They have changed some numbers and statistics this week, as in diversity numbers and things of that nature, but they have not changed to show any recovery.
Well, according to their system, 20 years from now, Wythe County's still gonna have at least 7 cases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Am I the only one that thinks
No, we're on the same page.
something's wrong with that system?
Yeah, you're right on.
Maybe they need to revisit it?
Absolutely.
Will you follow up with Dr. Shelton?
Yeah, go ahead.
And,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, because we are putting out false information essentially based on those numbers. It's not accurate.
5 years from now, I don't want to still be getting an email every day from Curtis going, we're standing steady at 7.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I've got. Thank you, Curtis.
Okay.
One other item, just to let you know, our auditors have been sending us information, VACO has been sending us information. There are some reimbursement accounts that have been set up out there. Curtis is tracking any expenditure that we've got on our side. I've been in touch with the finance director of the school, they are tracking expenses on their side. You know, it's all a matter of trying to figure out all the rules of what's reimbursable and what's not reimbursable. Bruce is setting up with Curtis ways of tracking those expenses on our side so we can try any reimbursable expense that we have that we can get in there. There's also, you know, there's documents drafting, you know, trying to calculate what you're going to anticipate losing in meals tax or lodging taxes and things like that. And, you know, you don't know whether anything will be recoupable under that, but at least we're trying to make certain we're tracking all that. Obviously, as the numbers start coming in, we'll track what our losses are from a month to month over a year to year basis and keep all of those and just see what can be submitted. But,
Are we doing one submission, or are we doing one submission and the school board doing a submission?
I think it'll probably be one submission jointly of everything.
So I know the town, I've got some information from them. I've been talking with the treasurer at Rural Retreat to get information from them. So we're going to submit on behalf of everyone. And our first submission is Friday. So we're putting it together right now to submit that, but there'll be other submissions as we move forward in this.
And I assume they'll let you know what's approved and what's not, like if the town of Retreat expends money or the town of Westfield,
Yeah,
we know, okay, that was approved, that's their money, we can
right.
divvy it up.
Yeah, that's correct.
On the school board side, I'm not sure how that works, because it's, some of it's federal, I mean, a little more difficult. Anybody else have any more questions or comments, rants for Mr. Crawford?
Just thank you, I know you said that you're busy, so.
Just, can I add one thing about yesterday? So we did have the flooding yesterday, and I was out with damage again today. We don't know how long it'll be on Millers Creek, but we did displace 2. That was the big damage that we had yesterday, along with Pope Road. We did have 2 people displaced yesterday. Red Cross took care of both of them, and pretty quickly. So pretty pleased with that. Just very thankful for our emergency services personnel that went out, did what was working with COVID, and then moved into flood response real quickly and did their part yesterday. So real thankful for that, their work.
On that note, on that information that you put out yesterday, I know Crawfish Road was one that was hit pretty hard.
Mhm.
You didn't list it. Are you getting your information from dispatch or?
Yes. So dispatch, usually what happens when we have a flood event is I get sent out with the other county deputies, and we check the events that are getting called in. And those were the ones that we got called out on yesterday that were marked in the dispatch system.
And after you mentioned Crawfish, I drove out that direction as well, because I knew he was in the other direction. And VDOT was actually leaving the scene at that point in time, all the way back to the Smiths. They had gotten open. The worst part was right, well, the initial worst part was right there past the bridge, past what's his name, the farm there, Harry Joe's. And they had, it was really soft in some areas, but they had gotten that opened all the way back through to the houses there. And then I didn't drive all the way back through there, but they were coming out with their trucks at that point in time.
Anybody else?
Just thank you to Stephen and Curtis, because when the COVID first started getting ramped up here, I sent an email out because the doctor's offices was not getting any information from the health department. And about 2 days later, that changed. So thank you guys for making that call and getting that fixed. And the healthcare providers that's not part of the testing sites definitely appreciate that.
Good.
Curtis, will you stay for a little bit, or you leaving?
I'm staying.
Okay, I wanted to ask a question about the lead lines on Richmond Squad.
Okay.
Mhm.
Maybe when you bring it up now, let's later.
We'll go right ahead.
We'll go there. I just wanted to kind of know the status of the rescue squad that has been through all of the repairs and still needs repair,
Mhm.
kind of what we're thinking on that.
Mr. McRoberts called me about that the other day. And Curtis may have information since I talked with him yesterday. I'm having a hard time putting all the pieces together of what they've got. And I don't know if you found anything out.
Don is supposed to get with me, the chairman of their board. We have quotes, but the quotes are from February. And so we're trying to determine if the fix that happened in Kernsville was beneficial at all, or, are we back to the same problem that we were at? And that way we can get you the full information to decide if we need to sink this much money back into that truck.
Is this the unit that needs the turbo that they're?
Yeah, this is 9A.
Yeah, they came in here and talked about the engine under warranty. And Scott had pulled some information on warranty. And then they came back and said they had taken it to Kernersville, and basically a sensor and maybe some gaskets had resolved that problem. And that's just happened probably within the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks or whatever. But then I got the word about this turbo. So they sent us the estimate on what it was going to take to replace the turbo. And I got to looking at it and going through it to bring to you all. Well, that estimate is from February 5th. Well, I thought when they went to Kernersville in the last month or so and said everything was okay, why did Kernersville not look at the turbo if that was a problem at that point in time? So that's what Curtis is trying to meet with them and understand what's been fixed or what hasn't been fixed. Do we need to bring Scott back into it on the engine warranty in the first place now? Because last we understood that what they take to Kernersville solved the problem. So now I'm confused about when the turbo went out.
Right, because if it's the turbo and it's the original problem, then we need to go back to the original person that put the engine in to get that paid for, because it's under warranty.
When it went to Kernersville, it was the gaskets bad on the turbo.
Right, that's what they had,
It wasn't
that's what
the-
was on their paperwork, but the problem persists, I guess.
Yeah, but that was when it first tore up. They took it up here to Direct Dodge when they told them that was what was wrong with it.
Well, now I was
Correct.
looking for a quote from Kernersville if it was the turbo to go with it on that side.
Now the turbo is bad on it, so. It's
So we're thinking,
$5,700.
It's $5,700 is the quote that's from February on that. I don't, I'm
is the
a-
quote from Kernersville?
no,
No, from Direct
quotes
Dodge.
from Direct Dodge and Jason's.
No, Jason's Auto was another issue.
Yeah,
So
it's
since
another
all this
issue.
was going on, another issue happened to the truck. It burned a wheel bearing in the front of the truck, and they had to replace the front end, parts of the front end.
And the old ambulance, he says he's talking about fixing it up. Well, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's a 96 model, and you talking about spending $4,000 or $5,000 just to get it where you can use it for how long? They ain't got one thing to do, that's fix the Dodge.
If you want to put, if you want to
Get
put
that thing-
$6,000 or something towards fixing that Dodge right now, in addition to what we paid on the motor already, we can do that and at least try to get straightened out on the quotes to understand what Direct Dodge doing, what Kernersville doing, and what somebody else is doing in the process.
I would like to look into that, because, we just sat here last week looking at all of the fire trucks we have to buy. And, we have so many, I just don't want to not, if we have to assist them with getting this one fixed, even though we've already poured money into it, after you all figure out what's going on, it beats all the wear and tear on the other two, and then next year at budget, we have to look at buying them a whole new truck.
Right, and what hurts the worst is that we just passed a grant period in March. And that could have been a hardship grant, But now we're back to waiting until September, so we sort of have
But
to move
also
on it.
so uncertain right now, too.
Correct.
So it seems like that's the only option we got, right, is to fix the
Yeah,
turbo,
correct.
right?
So,
Because
You
the
gotta
old
have
truck-
at least 200,000 miles before you can get a grant on another ambulance to take the place of that one, though.
Unless we can show habitual defects in the vehicle.
so the engine that was replaced in April of
That
19,
truck's got 130,000 miles on that. It's got a long time ago.
in April of 19, they replaced the engine in the vehicle. And
I'm
the-
sorry, Mr. Scott, I can't understand that.
I'm sorry, in April of 19, they replaced the engine in the vehicle, and they just replaced the engine. My understanding from the mechanic was the turbo is a separate piece from the engine, is not part of the engine. So it wouldn't fall under that warranty for the engine. The engine was just, I guess, the engine block, I don't know a lot about them, but it's just the engine alone, and the turbo is a separate piece that sits on the engine.
And how much was that repair in April 19?
It was 50.
It was right around $12,000 for the engine, and it was an engine rebuild and the labor to put it in. And they had to fix some injectors and stuff to get the warranty on the engine. They had to make some repairs to get the warranty on the engine.
Worst thing about it is, if we don't fix the Dodge, you're gonna wear the other two ambulances that you got down there now out, and you're gonna have, next year, you're gonna be 3 ambulances that's wore out.
Well, and also with COVID right now, if one ambulance goes down for being contaminated, you're down an ambulance in this time, so that makes it worse too.
Now, do they have the old ambulance from Witt County?
And they have
Yeah,
they also have their own van ambulance. And the one from Wythe County is the one Mr. McRoberts was talking about. They don't want to put it on as a running ambulance. They just want to basically stockpile it and use it for parts to keep their other one running.
It would cost way too much to.
Well, he says that uses a gallon of oil a day.
Yeah.
At $25 a gallon of oil. Won't take long to get it on up there.
I think they need something. I mean, they've got the two, they've got the other van ambulance that they currently have in stock. They are requesting a grant on the other one, or they requested for the budget next year, $40,000 to do that, but that's still a year out on it. It's hard for me to say to put another $6,000 into it, or $5,750 or whatever the number is. But, you know, if you put that into it, but if it continue having trouble, we're better off to sell it and see if we can find something to lease or find something else instead of continuing to try to put our money down. Now, I mean, it's just minor problems, that's it. If we keep having engine problems out of it.
How long are we looking at?
Who's saying it needs a turbo? Who's saying that's?
Direct Dodge said it needed a turbo on February
Well,
5th.
Direct Dodge and they took it to Smoking Guns, both say that,
That it needs a turbo.
that it needs a turbo. Yeah.
That was what they first said was wrong with it when the motor, when you replaced the motor.
And then Kernersville said it just needed gas.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's what I don't understand.
I know a little bit about it. And there's a lot of difference between it needs a turbo and it needs gas.
Yep.
Mhm.
And if you're replacing a motor, you need to replace the turbo or rebuild the turbo.
Yep.
Because the turbo spins a lot faster than the motor.
Yep.
So one could safely say that if the motor's wore out, odds are the
Turbo.
turbo's wore out.
Most of the time the turbo will wear out before.
Gee,
Yeah.
I mean,
So technically, we don't have to make a decision tonight because we are meeting, you know,
We could do that after he talked to them to see, yes.
and that way we can know a little bit more about that leadership thing.
and have them go get quotes from Direct Dodge and Smoking Guns and,
Mhm.
you know, get their,
Well, they'd probably be a lot better off to buy it from a Dodge place, because it's gotta be warranty.
Yeah.
It
I
ain't,
think, Smoker Guns offers warranty on their products too, based on my experience.
Well, and at a minimum, we gotta have an updated quote. That's from February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we
So
need
we need a
to
little bit,
update.
yeah, we do need a little bit more info, but something, I mean, something's got to be done about it. So,
I
thanks
can't
for that.
believe that you'd pay $5,700 for a turbo and it not have a warranty of some kind.
All right.
So maybe we'll know
We'll
something
talk
by
to
next
Don
week.
and we'll see.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, a couple things under the COVID-19 that I've got down there. The first of all, would request that you all approve waiving the $10 processing fee and issue full refunds to all those campers who have made a deposit or on campsites or shelters during the closure of the campground.
I will make that motion.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, any discussion? Here none, do a roll call vote, Mr. Terry.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
So approved.
The other two are informational purposes. We've got delaying opening the campground to the weekend of June 12th, and that's all dependent upon everything being opened back up at that point in time. You are welcome to take action, but if you all are fine, just administratively, staff, y'all usually don't vote on when it opens or when it closes anyway, but we'll just, based on when things are going, let that go. Same thing on the pool, and if it goes too late in the season, we just might not have a pool season at all this year. So we'll see how that goes as we move forward. But unless y'all have any other questions about it, that's all on the Parks and Recreation.
All right, the National Emergency Funding Request. You want-
Yeah, 35051, you all, a couple meetings ago, set up a code for the 35051 for emergencies, and remember, we transferred some funds from some other departments into that. I would like to request that you all go ahead and approve $15,000 as an amended and appropriation to go into that organization number. Don't plan to spend it, but just in case Curtis has to order $5,000 worth of something for emergency supplies or whatever, he's got those funds in there to do it, because, and we can track it under that. He may have funds under his own department now, but in order to move funds from one department to another, that takes board action. I can't just move $5,000 out of Curtis's department into this national emergency department. So nothing to be wasted, nothing to be spent unless needed, but at least it gives him some seed money in there to buy anything that may come up in an emergency, and then anything else we need to move over there, we can do that.
Entertain a motion to amend and appropriate $15,000 to 35051.
So move.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
Is that a good place to get the money to fix it, Dodge? There ain't no big emergency than that to me.
Yep.
Be nice if we get reimbursed for that. Any other questions or discussion? Do a roll call vote, Mr. Smith.
Aye.
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 Yeah.
Aye.
So approved. Water use and management ordinance policy.
Yes, as I've got in my memo right there, our ordinance, the county's law basically establishes the disconnect for payment. The SCC has recommended regulated utilities, or has ordered regulated utilities to not cut off water. We do not fall under that, under that order, but do request that you all authorize us to waive the disconnect for this period up through June 10th. We can extend it out later if we need to in the future. We will still send late notices and disconnect notices, but we will not actually be doing the physical disconnects on those individuals.
Entertain a motion to suspend the water, wastewater disconnects through June 10th.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 So approved. New River Regional Water Authority Financial Report.
Informational purposes, Mr. Chairman, you all may take action to accept the report as you'd like, but basically a clean report for the New River Regional Water Authority.
Entertain a motion to accept the fiscal year 19 financial report from New River Regional Water Authority.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 So accepted. Anything else under new business?
Mr. Chairman, in front of you is the ordinance, emergency ordinance for temporary changes and deadlines for public meeting and practices. Basically, it's a continuity of government ordinance. County attorney is here to answer any questions that you might have. But in short, it gives us the ability in those organizations to which we appoint members to be able to meet in electronic meeting format if deemed necessary. There are stipulations and guidelines and notifications and all those that still have to be followed, but it just gives us the ability to meet electronically.
Also with this ordinance is if you choose to pass this ordinance tonight, you're passing this ordinance on an emergency basis. Normally to have an ordinance passed, you have to set a public hearing, have a public hearing. So what happens is you pass this ordinance tonight, you have to have a public hearing within 60 days. And if you do that on your June 9th meeting, that puts you right in front of that 60 days by 4 or 5 days. And if you don't need it anymore, you can just let it die, or you hold the public hearing and then re-adopt the ordinance. But the public hearing does need to be set at some point, so they can advertise that for whatever date you choose. I just recommended June 9th to get towards the end of that.
Can we vote to accept the ordinance and set the?
Yeah, I think you could do a motion to adopt the ordinance, that passes, and then somebody does a motion to set a public hearing to re-adopt the ordinance on June 9th, and then that's taken care of.
We do it all in one?
I'd do it in two separate motions, yeah.
Entertain a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-01.
I make that motion.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Here now, do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
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 Yeah.
Aye. Aye.
So adopted. Entertain a motion to set a public hearing on June the 9th.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Here now, do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye. Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 Anything else under old business? Moving on to reports, Budget Committee.
The Budget Committee met on April 7th, 2020, and makes the following recommendations. To amend and appropriate $30,532 to account 32032-461400 for the purchase of 4 defibrillators for the Rural Retreat Volunteer Emergency Services.
Mr. Barrett, you want to give a summary of this request?
Yes, in FY 2019, Rural Retreat did not draw down county allotted funds in the amount of $30,532. So that just rolled back over, was not spent. So they are requesting this, and while that is a good amount of money, it is money that they didn't spend last fiscal year. So had they drawn it down last year, we would have expended it anyway. So they will combine this with money that they currently have budgeted this year for maintenance and supplies and things, and are buying the 4 defibrillators. It cost them about $61,000 for all 4 of them.
And if I'm not mistaken, the FDA regulations,
Yeah, they expire at the end of this year.
yeah,
They
they
expired.
Yeah. Coming from committee doesn't need a second. Any more questions or discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
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 Yeah.
Aye.
So approved.
To transfer $33,109 from the Concealed Weapons Permit Fund 7002-702 to the Police Activity Fund, and to amend and appropriate the same to 31021-470030. The funds will be used to purchase new vehicles for the Sheriff's Office.
Mr. Barrett, do you have anything to add to that?
No, sir, do not. More than adequate funds available in the Concealed Weapons Permit Fund for the transfer.
Coming from committee doesn't need a second. Any questions or discussion?
What kind of vehicle is it? Any idea?
I'd say it's probably the Ford Interceptor SUV,
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Durango.
Is it Durango?
Okay.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Approved. 5-2 abstain.
To transfer $5,000 from the Electronic Summons Fund and to amend and appropriate the same to 3102-470015 for the purchase of Tough Books and powered vehicle cradles used for electronic ticketing.
Anything to add to that, Mr. Barrett?
No, sir, do not.
Any question or discussion?
How many is that, do we know?
Not many.
Hmm?
Not many.
That's why I was curious,
Yeah.
is it one for the one vehicle, or is it?
No, do you remember, I know they're buying refurbished stuff, but do you remember what those run, Curtis?
No, but I know that we're refitting at least 3, maybe 4 vehicles right now, so I'm sure that has to do with some of it.
And it
Any more
doesn't.
questions? Do a roll call vote, Mr. Terry.
Aye. Aye.
Yeah.
Abstain.
Abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
So approved. Is that all from the?
That's
Budget
all from the
Committee?
Budget Committee, Mr. Chairman.
Moving on to Board of Supervisors report. Mr. Smith?
I do. We talked about this last week about the Apex Center cutting off the lights, possibly shuttering it through the June 10th deadline. I just wanted to know where we were at with that.
They've discussed it at their next meeting. I understand they are even discussing or looking at personnel and where they are on that as well. So they are trying to do all those steps. I do not know if all those lights have been cut off yet or not, but I will follow up with the chairman of their board and see where they are on that.
Okay. I'll ride by on the way being tonight. Muskrat Road, I know we had talked about it in the past. They want to see if there's something we can do there, making it a state maintained road. I know that we need to meet with those residents up in that area. I just wanted to keep that in front of us. Water, we talked about the Atkins Mill, Whippoorwill, Pepper's Ferry, and Gutton Park. There is a fire hydrant that's damaged or missing in Cartersville Heights, and there's water running down the side of the road prior to all the rain yesterday. And it's around where Mike Collins lives, and Chucky Brown.
Cartersville Heights Road.
Yes, sir. We can check on that. And then getting a lot of questions from the residents in Locust Hill about broadband, which I know we discussed this a little bit last week as well. That is a big topic, that and water on that end of the county. So. And then, Mr. Chairman, the last thing I got, about a month ago, we asked Mr. Rambo to go out and take care of some cattle issues on a farm down on Gunton Park Road. The owner of the cattle has yet to pay. I contacted the gentleman as a representative of the board, asking him to go do this for us. He's wanting to know if we could pay him what he's owed, because he doesn't seem to be getting anywhere with the owner of the cattle.
It is a bad situation, and Mr. Rambo took care of a need out there. We provided a list of contractors to the landowner. The individual that owned the cattle was not doing it. We provided a list of contacts of people that could possibly do it. We cannot send our crew out there. We don't go out on the private property and do those things. And if we started, we'd probably be doing it a lot of locations. You all have the ability to approve it should you want to, but I would discourage us starting to pay for work on private property for other people, whether it's cattle or whatever the situation may be.
Was there any legal action taken?
The gentleman has been charged, yes, but obviously if everything tied up and not going to court, I do not know the date on when that goes to court.
Can we not seek restitution if we paid Mr. Rambo?
We can certainly do that. And he has a copy.
And I understand what you're saying. You don't want to start this, but at the same time, especially with everything going on, I'm sure this business owner, needs to get paid. And I don't know if excuse me, Mr. Farthing or Mr. Martin want to chime in on the legal side of it.
What was the service? Do we know what the service, did he build fence or?
No,
what did he do?
he went out there. There were dead cattle that,
And
Mr.
how many cattle, we're not talking about
no.
a calf.
Now, we're talking 10 to 15, maybe even 20.
Just cows, he had to dig a hole and bury them?
Yeah.
Okay. Who knows? I mean, you have the right to pay the bill. If you've got a public health issue going on, which that could be a public health issue, protect the welfare of the citizens.
And that was my point. It wasn't one cow.
Right.
It was a bad situation.
Yeah,
I mean,
'cause
it needed to be resolved.
Yeah, a lot of the cattle that was dead was laying in a spring that was feeding wells for the residents
Yeah.
beside.
And I'm not sure how the restitution thing would work. We could look into that and talk to the Commonwealth Attorney about, hey, the county spent this money to prevent a public health problem that may have resulted had they not been buried, and try to get that through the restitution. I'm not sure if we didn't contract with Rambo to do it, or we didn't contract with the owner to do it, we can look into trying to figure out how can we make the owner pay us, or can we sue that to get reimbursed for his problem. But I think the way to do that would be try to tie it into the restitution on animal cruelty or whatever. I'm not sure what his charge is, but
Do you know what he was charged with?
No, sir, I do not.
Who did Mr. Dunford
Miss-
charge?
so I think the county could potentially, offer to pay the bill for a general welfare thing for the citizens if you wanted to. But, the next dairy farmer or cattle farmer that has 10 cows dies, he gonna come to the county and say, hey, will you come bury my cows for me?
Well,
So, I don't think that would happen, but.
I think the difference in this is the owner of the deceased animal didn't request the county do that. This was done because, like Mr. Smith said,
You're getting
it was a
complaints.
public health issue.
You're getting complaints, right.
And the
And-
cattle were not on land that the cattle owner owned. It was leased
It was
property.
leased property.
So,
How much was the bill?
$1,000,
How much?
1,000.
Mr. Farthing, will you work with,
We were with Mike Jones' office and,
and Mr. Dunford
yep,
to make sure, and
yeah, we'll try to tack that on the restitution and say the county, if the county reimbursed the money, Mr. Rambo will have a check for that, and we'd say the county paid for this because of the hazard that it was to the community, and we took care of it. And then ask them to get that back. So,
I'd request amended appropriation to 1101, the Board of Supervisors Department, and we'll process the bill.
I'll make that motion.
have a motion to amend and appropriate, what was it, $1,000 to that, line item. Second. Any questions or discussion?
How long they been dead? Can we tie that into COVID-19?
I think it was a month earlier.
I was honestly afraid to ask you how much the bill was.
Yeah, it was 1,000.
That's surprised me, but anyway. Any other question or discussion? Hearing none, do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So approved. Anything else, Mr. Smith?
Nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cook?
Have nothing, sir.
Ms. Lawson?
When is the next hazardous waste day?
It's usually the fourth Saturday of September, third or fourth Saturday of September.
And who sets that date? Us? Or
The
joint-
JPSA.
Okay.
Yep.
Just wondering, I mean, I know we have all of this other crazy stuff going on right now with the virus, but just wondering if we could maybe talk to them about doing one this summer. You've got all these people, I had someone ask me about it, that's what got me thinking about it, but got all these people doing their spring cleaning and what I call Corona cleaning projects right now. And I
I can check.
didn't
They've
really
got a-
know where to start
yeah,
with
they-
it, so.
They've got a contract with a firm that does it, and I don't know if that date is
Okay.
already set. It would have to be after July 1st because it's a budget thing each year, and they continue to do it as long as they have money. The problem is it's getting to be more and more expensive to do that thing, and it's probably, is it $30-some thousand it costs, Mr. Horny, do you remember?
Wow.
Yeah, so, it's a service that the JPSA offers and pays for. We can ask and see, but more
Yeah,
than
and
likely it's
that's-
probably.
Yeah, and that's
set
fine.
date.
Like I said, I just didn't really know how to answer this person's questions because I've never really looked into it before, so.
Do you know what their hazardous waste was?
They said paint, and I told them to pop the lid and let it dry and throw it in the dumpster.
That's what I was gonna say, if it's paint, take the lid off of it, let it dry,
I
and
know.
throw it away.
And that's
Nothing wrong
fine, I
with it that
guess.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paint an old piece of board and let it dry and throw it away, You can do whatever it is, but
Okay,
just let it
gotcha.
dry.
You can just let it dry in the can, I mean.
Yeah. I
A lot
just
of
didn't know
people
who set
A
the
lot of
date.
people will get a little box or whatever, put some kitty litter in it, pour it in it, and just let it set up and dry in the kitty litter. And then it can be thrown
When a lot
away.
of people just take it to the dumpster and trash it,
Trash it.
and that's why I was trying to
Yeah.
kind of avoid,
Right.
Okay, but that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
On that issue, the catch-22, the spring cleaning is creating a little bit of issues for the recycling centers. It's a combination of factors. One, you've got people that decide to take the old couch there, but, everybody is supposed to take stuff all the way up to the front and try to throw it on the front. Well, people are like, I don't want to go in a trash bin because what's everybody else thrown in there in the process? So you get people just throwing stuff inside the back door. Well, one worker can't move the heavy stuff and move it back in. I've told VM to continue to try to work with everybody to get them to move the stuff back in there as far as possible. but it is creating some issues on that. They would like for us to consider going to bag trashed only during the COVID-19. That way, everything can be thrown over the top, the doors can be shut or whatever, not taking heavy stuff. I don't encourage that right now. I think we need them to continue to try to manage it as best they
I
can.
know they are very busy.
But if it ends up being more problems, or we have more COVID-19 cases, we may have to look at that from our side as well. I mean, they're having their workers be careful and not, everybody needs to be throwing their own trash away. And everyone's really seems to be working well on that side.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Mr. McRoberts,
I don't have anything.
Mr. Horny,
The only thing I had was Gus Gitzer called me today. He brought up something in Citizens Time about us doing an ordinance against House Bill 421. And I asked Stephen earlier, we haven't done anything with it? Are we looking at doing anything, or is it in committee, or?
When it originally came up, at that point in time, I don't think it had been signed. I am assuming.
Actually, it's still not been signed.
Okay.
and until, even if it's signed, it doesn't go into effect July 1st. My thing is going back, and if you read the Second Amendment resolution that we passed back in the fall, it covers that, because it says we won't expend any county funds to restrict anybody's Second Amendment right. And that bill says that gives us, the local government, the authority to say we want to ban firearms from these meetings.
Right.
Well, in order for us to do that, it would have to be, we would have to purchase signage, whether Stephen orders really nice signs that go out here that says no weapons allowed, or Martha prints them out. That's still expending county funds. That's the way I look at it. I don't know that it's needed.
And where it gives you the authority to do that, what Mr. Kinzer asked for is basically for you to pass an ordinance saying that we won't pass an ordinance to do that, which I'll let the attorneys say, but basically the code gives you the authority to pass such an ordinance. I don't know under following Dillon's rule that the code gives you the authority to pass an ordinance to not do that ordinance in the process. So as long as you don't vote to do that ordinance, it's not in effect.
And regardless, you'd still have to have a public hearing,
Yes.
all that, so the citizens would have a right to air their grievances or support.
Yeah.
So you would have to have a public hearing to ban the weapons?
Yes, you'd have to do it. It gives you the ability to do an ordinance to do that.
Okay.
And so.
Or if you have an ordinance saying we're not going to entertain that ordinance, you still have to have a
Right.
Do a public hearing.
That's,
Well, and see, and that was what Gus brought up the point today was, he understood that, the next board that comes on, or 2 or 3 boards down the road, could say, we don't like that ordinance, we're gonna do away with it. But if they did that, they would have to have a public hearing to do away with it.
I mean,
But
even
what y'all are saying is we would have to have a public hearing if we decided to ban weapons
Right.
anywhere, so.
I mean,
there
even,
still will be a public hearing.
even the ordinance that, like Mr. Farthing said that we passed tonight, even though it's an emergency, we still eventually have to have a public hearing.
Okay.
There's no, unless I'm mistaken, there's no way to avoid a public hearing. In layman's terms, there's no way to sneak anything by the public.
Oh, I understand that,
Is-
but I just didn't know with the governor passing that, if it was that we could just say, we're gonna ban guns here, and that was it, or if we had to have an ordinance that said we ban guns from this
Right.
certain area.
Yeah,
Right,
that's
makes
correct.
sense.
So in order to follow that House Bill 421, whatever it is, you all have to have eventually have a public hearing and pass the ordinance to say, Wythe County bans guns at Ager Park or at the Rural Tree Campground. I mean, you can limit where you put it, but you can say, in order to do that, you have to pass the ordinance. To pass the ordinance, you gotta have a public hearing, so.
Don't use a retreat campground because the state owns that. It's like the health department,
Yeah.
that even though the county owns that building, they lease it, so under Governor, Northam,
whoever, the last
You can
one.
say your favorite governor.
You know, he said nothing in a state bill, but anyway. Anything else, Mr. Horny?
I think that's it.
Mr. Terry?
I have two things, Mr. Chairman. I got 3 different phone calls from some citizens, and one was, he's not a citizen, but he was involved in molds at the Apex Center being cut. It was just asking about follow-up on testing, if there's any follow-up testing been done and what those results were.
Mr. Barrett?
I would have, I will get in touch with him,
Okay.
and contact him, and see, basically, they have threatened a claim against the county, but did not request any funding in the process.
Right.
I would recommend that any other correspondence that comes through, that we refer him to the county attorney, or to me, to the county attorney to talk to about that.
Awesome.
And so we can find out, but I will talk to him.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I have, Mr. Chairman, is I've got a couple phone calls from both the eastern end and western end of the county about broadband. And I know that's something that we all got in front of us, and that's something we want to move on. I think what's really driving a lot of it is kids out of school trying to do schoolwork and they don't have access to the resources to do it, so.
Between high school kids and college kids that have had to come home, it is definitely showing the strong need in all the rural areas for improved broadband. And just, there are individuals that I spoke with even today that are trying to come up with ways of providing hotspots at certain locations, whether it's schools. I mentioned, that still does not help enough. That, people can't really sit in their cars and work there effectively, but they're trying. An agency I spoke with today is trying to come up with ways that they can work with partners, some of our current broadband providers, and look at providing additional areas for immediate service until we can get even more broadband in other areas. But you and Mr. Smith are correct. It is a critical need.
Mr. Farthing, do you have anything to add to that?
I'd love to have that on Blackwood Road.
I was gonna ask that phone call he got from the western end, did it pop up Scott Farthing Law, or?
I haven't made that request recently.
It was actually from people, 3 different people out on Black Lick, and 2 people down on the eastern end of the county have reached out to me, so. But it wasn't Mr. Farthing.
Is that, and all joking aside, is that something that we could, is that something we can appoint a committee to look at?
We need to develop a committee and a task force of not just board people, but others as well, for that entire broadband process. Jean, I'll think of her last name in a minute, has been in contact with me a couple times, offering ways of assistance of helping us get some of those things started and going forward. And that needs to happen as soon as we get the budget wrapped up, but we've got that going.
Well, I've got my appointees, so everybody else find somebody. Anything else, Mr. Terry?
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
The only thing I have, in going back to talking about trash and dragging Mr. Farthing front and center, Flying J exit 77, I talked to Mr. Dunford. He's a little confused as to whether he needs to send a letter to the general manager up here, the corporation. I rode up there today. It's just as bad as it was a month ago when I brought it up.
I would think you do it locally. Here's where I think
Will you work with him and let's get some,
Yeah, I'll do that.
something moving?
We can send it to both.
That was my recommendation, but, if he needs help with the verbiage or,
Yeah, we can write the letter even, and let him sign it and send it.
but at least at the end of the day, I want to be able to say we tried. I mean, I don't know if, you hate to drag somebody in court, but, I mean, that's horrible. And I don't know if y'all been up there and looked at it, but
See it every day.
it's just,
way the wind blew the last 2 days, I can't see how there can be anything.
Well, I think it's where it's in that valley, and it gets on that bank, and then it.
Yeah, the wind just comes over top of it.
It's kinda like cemetery flowers at my house, they get down in that
Yep.
dip and.
No, that's just people think you're dead and they're throwing them in the yard.
The,
Take a bath, Brian.
At least I got flowers.
They're dead too.
the apex fence is nothing more than like a snowdrift fence right now. It's same thing on it. And we can't charge them under that. We can charge them on the right-of-way side of it, but it's the same thing. It's fence isn't catching it on their side,
just
it's
slows it
blowing it
down
over
so
the
the
top
land's
and it
on
just
our
drops
side.
on our side.
There you go.
That's all I have. Anybody else have anything? All right, entertain a motion to go into closed session under code section 2.2-3711.A.5, discussion of prospective industry.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any question, discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Smith.
Aye.
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 Now in closed session. Come out of closed session.
So move.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Do a roll call vote, Mr. Smith.
Aye.
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 Yeah.
Aye.
Entertain a motion to ratify the closed session,
So moved.
or I guess you have to read, sorry, read the resolution.
Oh, you telling me to read this?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution, certification of closed meeting. Whereas the Witt County Board of Supervisors has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.23712 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Witt County Board of Supervisors that such a meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Witt County Board of Supervisors hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, on only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies. And two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the Witt County Board of Supervisors.
Entertain a motion to certify the closed session.
So moved.
Okay.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Do a roll call vote, Mr. Terry.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
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 Entertain a motion authorizing the chairman of the board to sign the land contract that was discussed in closed session.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Smith.
Abstain.
Aye.
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 So approved. 6 and 1 absentation. I'll get that word right one of these days. Mr. Barry, anything else?
Nothing else for open session on that, Mr. Chairman. I would request that you go into closed session that's not on your agenda for 2.2-3711A7, consultation with attorney regarding Freedom of Information Act request.
I would say too, that I know you've got several things for closed session tonight. You can go in under personnel.
And you can
at the
just
same
leave.
time, And then as long as the people that are required to be here are board members. So as long as all 7 or however many's here when you come in, the same number have to be here when you come out to vote on the resolution. But you can invite people in and out at your pleasure. So you go in under legal counsel and personnel right now. You don't have to come out and then come back in. You can just excuse me and Mr. Martin, and then you can do the personnel thing. Invite whoever you want to come in for personnel. So,
Entertain a motion to go into closed session under Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A1, discussion of personnel matters, and Code Section 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel.
So moved.
Have a motion, have a second.
Second.
Any questions, discussion? Do a roll call vote. Mr. Terry?
Aye.
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 Now in closed session.